Welcome, everybody, to 52 Living Ideas. It's wonderful to be back, and we are continuing our exploration of the diagram. The new name for the diagram is Loving the Center diagram. Okay, because when I look at all the key figures that we've been studying, whether it is Louis Sullivan, any new person I look at, or the Bible, or Tao Te Ching, or the Bible, or the Bhagavad Gita, the consistent message throughout is love the center. It's all about that. It's all about being focused on the center. It's all about listening to the center and then speaking from the center. So that radial movement is the heart of how you become close to the center, how you live, how you're virtuous, how you bring truth and beauty and goodness to your life and to the life of people around you in the world. So loving the center is the heart of it. So here is my new diagram. And what I'm going to do is that today we are only going to look at the radial movement, movement from the center to the periphery. And we're going to look at lots of dynamics of that. Okay, so we're not going to look at the circular movement. We're not going to look at the angular movement. Okay, we are going to focus on the radial movement. There is a natural angular movement that happens in the course of the radial movement. So that's what we're going to focus on. So let me get started. Let's see here. Can you see the diagram, Joe?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
All right. So you will notice a few things here. I've removed all the names. Don't want to focus on the names. There are colors there, but keep them in the background. Okay, those don't matter at this stage. They do matter, but they matter as a secondary consequence, not as a primary consequence. So fundamental is the radial. Fundamental is loving the center. It is your movement to the center and from the center. You will notice this heart shape over here. That, I think, is a characteristic movement to the center and from the center. So the idea here is you love the center by listening to the center. This movement here is listening to the center. From the periphery, you're going towards the center. And then you speak from your center. So this is speaking. Okay, so first, this is a model of conversation. It is not one way. It is two way. It's a conversation. That is fundamental. Okay, this idea that it is a conversation. It is you speaking to the center and the center speaking back. You listening to the center. So think of this as Krishna and Arjun. Krishna is standing right here in the center. Arjun is at various places. And what is he doing? He is listening to Krishna, and Krishna is speaking to him. So there is this back and forth that is going on. He's speaking, he's saying, this is what I think I should be doing. This is what operating from my Atma is like. In the Bible, it is the grace is coming down upon you and you are loving God or Jesus. So that's the two-way communication. And you don't get anything unless you have both these things. You have to listen and you have to speak. Now let's break down listening and speaking. I'm saying that each of them consist of two parts. Speaking has two parts. You speak from the center and you come up to here. Okay, you'll notice that one big change in the diagram is that I have 4 circles, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this movement goes across, from the center to all these 4 circles. So first I'm going to describe this movement. So far I've described it in terms of this is listening and this is speaking. I'm going to divide it into 4. And then we're going to look at the place of each of these points. You see those purple points, what these are. These are different stages you're in, different states you're in, but you can't understand the states without understanding the movement. You will notice that the movement is actually very complex. I've just taken one of these cycles. Notice that there are other cycles like this, 8 other cycles. So I'll come to that too. So first, let's look at listening and speaking. Speaking consists of 2 phases. In Louis Sullivan's term, I'm going to keep using different people's terms to describe the same thing, because this is like bringing together of so many different ideas. The function is right here in the center. And this circle here is the form that is following the function. So this part of speaking from the center up to this second level, this part is function creating its own form in an active way. So you're full of function. This is what you need to do. You're using all your faculties to create this form, this part from here to here. That's the first phase of speaking. There is a second phase of speaking. If you don't watch out, you get attached to the forms that you've created. And you continue on, through inertia, through drifting, all the way down here. So this is the second part of speaking. This is drifting. So this is sustaining. This is you implementing the deepest of the universal principles in your life, in that particular situation. And this part over here, from this to this, is you drifting, you holding on to forms, you getting attached to your emotions, to your habits, to your thoughts. So those are the 2 parts of speaking. Listening has 2 parts. The first part, which is the hardest, is from here. This is like the rock bottom, back to this point. And this is basically saying no to the fact, saying no to your own habits, to your own emotions, to your own thoughts, saying that I have gone away from the center. I've been drifting. And this is coming back towards the center. By saying no to this, you have not achieved anything yet. You have just done destruction of what is there, but that is a precondition to creation. This is saying no to yours drifting away from the center. This is your commitment to returning to the center, to the forms which are functionated. During this point, you have not created anything positive. You have just gotten rid of the negative, but it is a precondition to creating the positive. The second part of listening is the part of creation, is you being focused on the center and orienting yourself towards the center. This is the child part. This is you being curious about the center, you having given up all your baggage, focusing on the center afresh, in the present, being fully conscious. That is this part. So let me recap all 4 stages. Let's start from here. This is creation. This is Brahma. This is curiosity. This is focus on the center. This is what gets a new creation cycle started. This part is having freshly come to the center. Now you're acting from it and you're trying to bring it to your life. This is the sustaining part. This is Vishnu. So this is Brahma. This is Vishnu. Now this part is quintessential man. This is all our evolutionary heritage of being attached to the things around us just because they are around us. Things being attached to things in us just because they are in us, because of proximity, because of your familiarity. So this part is drifting. This part is pure destruction of the past. This going from this rock bottom back. This is Shiva. So this is Brahma, Vishnu, man, and Shiva in the terms of Bhagavad Gita. Let's look at it in terms of Nietzsche. This is the camel. This is you carrying on whatever it is that is around you. This part going down like this. That's the camel. This is the lion saying no to everything, coming back towards this. This is the lion, and this is the child. Having said God is dead, Nietzsche does not include this as one of the stages, but if I have to project into his philosophy, this is what the ideal man is. This is what I think he's trying to get at through Übermensch. So that's how Nietzsche would look at this. So these 4 phases are the 4 phases that are possible to us. What we're trying to do here is to see what is possible. Now, they don't have to occur in this order. So for example, if you're alive to life, if you're conscious, if you're honest, you go through this phase of creating the form. And when you reach here, you can be a child. You see this line coming back? You can be on this line going back to the center. So you're going from the sustenance to creation, and you remain inside this. You can create this thing and then screw up and keep going. But right over here, before you go further, you notice that you have created something which is away from this functionated form, right here, just outside. And you destroy that. And you go back in the child loop, back. Or you can go up to here and come back. Or you can go up to here and come back. Or you can go to the rock bottom. So you can come back on any of these. You can also, when you create, you can come back, come to this circle here, radiant circle, and you can continue on this radiant circle, using the creation and sustenance. You're listening to this, the pattern remains the same. you are listening to the center and you're speaking from the center. You're doing, that pattern remains the same. What is happening here is that you stop listening to the center. You're going away from the center and this radiant life. That's when you stop listening. So this is a very quick overview. And then, so I want to get any questions, any comments on this part. And then I will go and talk about these 4 circles and what they mean. So I want to open it up for comments, any comments or any questions that you have. I do want to hear from you about what you're getting from this. So let's start with Evanik. Go ahead and type exclamation mark in chat if you'd like to say something, or raise your hand in Zoom. Evanik.
So I love this diagram. I love the heart. I love the movement of it. I think it kind of has like a redemptive quality in that, when you start off with the speaking and it's from the center and you go out and you said, like, well, in the Louis Sullivan example, you create the function creates the form, but then, as we do in life, we get attached to the form and we forget the function. But in each stage, even if you hit rock bottom, you can always come back. And I like how it goes from the phase of speaking first. I like that you put that first, because you have that, and then you could see where it could go, towards the periphery, but then you can come back through listening. Like, you can listen or look for, observe. I would also maybe even recommend listening and observe, and maybe saying listening and observation, because you can observe yourself moving away and drifting, and then you can but you said that's the hardest part, because now you got to give up what you've attached yourself to, and then you can come back. And then that's where the focus on the center does. It brings you back. So after you've hit that kind of rock bottom and you realize, oh, I've drifted away, you can come back. You can focus on the center. And you can only see that you've hit rock bottom once you observe it. Once you observe, I think of hitting rock bottom as observing that you're stressed over little things, that you're irritated, things just, things are off, and you're observing that. And then you can focus yourself and fully focus back on the center. So the way I'm looking at it on my screen is like you go right, and then you go down, and then you come back up on the left, and then you still hit the center. So I like it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Evanik. I want to make one point. I want to build up on what you said about observation. So this is observation. This part is observation, where you're saying, oh, things of what I was expecting, they are not exactly, what I'm seeing is actually not what I was expecting. There is a contradiction. This is to kind of admit that. The deepest idea on this part is that of John Boyd. So this is the OODA loop. This is observation. This is orientation. You're orienting towards the center. This is deciding or planning what you need to do. And this is you doing it. And realize that in various contexts, the situation is so changing dramatically that it is because we are beings of limited consciousness, we are going to go into this area. And you have to have honesty of observing and noticing that when you have gone into this area, and be willing to come back from wherever you can. Hopefully, if you're, as put it, John Boyd's, if you can do it faster than the enemy, faster than others, you're going to do better. So this part, like coming back from here, is coming back fastest. Sometimes you have to notice it only, you notice it only here. Sometimes you will notice it. That will also differ in different areas of your life. Some areas where you're very, very good, you may be able to remain here. Some areas where you're learning, you might have to slip before you notice. You're not yet, your observation power is not great enough to do that. And absolutely, it has a redemptive quality. What it is saying is that you can come back to the center anytime. There is a price you pay from going away from the center, yet you have the capability of correcting it anytime. So absolutely, thank you, Avanik. Joe.
Thank you for doing this. I mean, and all the iterations, that's the first thing that comes to mind, is that, this is a lot of work. You can see it. And so in order to synthesize these ideas so succinctly it's a hard thing to do, to keep drawing and to do this. So I like it as well. A lot. And as somebody actually commented, that this could be helpful with CBT, but it could also be helpful in so many other ways. You can map so many different things to it. I look at it as you kind of this area between going where you're drifting is really kind of where you have this fixed perspective on the world, where you're ignoring feedback and you're limiting yourself. And I like the way you described this with the idea of proximity. And I see this as almost a liberating diagram, as a way of achieving a certain amount of freedom from your own personal desires. So that you're actually, if you are going in between this drifting mode, if you're going to that and through that phase, your desires and your understanding of the world, you're letting that dictate, you're letting the world dictate who you are. Whereas there's this journey that we can come on and that we can go on, where we're integrating people's or information in general, where we're accepting criticism and we're integrating and changing. And I think that this is the listening part, that we're very much starting to integrate the feedback that we're getting from other people and how we integrate that feedback. And to your point, how quickly we integrate that feedback as well. It's will determine how much, whether we can reorient ourselves and get to our center. And again, this applies to across everything we've discussed. So I like this a lot. I think the idea of creation is, I like how you phrase that as well. But I look at this as a liberating diagram, your personal liberation, though it could be applied to anything. I applied it very narrowly, but.
Wonderful, Joe. Thank you very much. And it is, I fully agree. And this is liberating, and this is liberating on so many different levels, because what it is saying is that you can come back. You have the freedom to return to the center anytime. That movement you can do anytime, and you can do it along any axis. So you can be here, you can do that in your thought, you can do that in your action, you can do that in your emotions, you can do that in your intuition. You could have made a mistake in your thinking and you can correct it through your feeling. You can have made a mistake in your action and you can fix it in your thinking. So it's like, and all of these come together. So you can speak and listen on all these axes. All these are open to you. This could also be you listening to other people who are better at some things. So saying, oh, this person noticed something that I did not notice. So it is kind of continuum of kind of listening at the widest possible level and speaking at the widest possible level and running these loops of going between form and function, going from function to form and then returning back to the function relentlessly. Thank you, Joe. Next up is Jyoti. Folks, if you have any comments on this, I would love to hear. Jyoti, go ahead.
So I do find this diagram very useful because it's a evaluative process. How much morally engaged you are, where are you stuck, what attachment you have gotten to so close to, and how you have to shed it, in what way you can shed it to go back to the center. So it's a good process. It gives you an insight into yourself. And like I said, it's very useful. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jyoti. So I'm going to elaborate on the evaluative part. Brian, did you have something?
Yeah, one of the things I like about this is if I'm understanding it correctly, the Shiva, the destructive part, is part of the motion back towards creation. So there's no, it's a unity. As shown here, it's a loop. There's the destruction has inherent in it the creation, the end has in it inherent the beginning. That's what I'm seeing here, and I like that.
Absolutely. The way in which I was talking about this diagram to my dad, and he says, yes, and he put it very beautifully. He says, look, if you have a tree, the old leaf has to fall off before there is a place for a new leaf. And the old leaf falling off actually is absorbed as nutrients, which produces the new leaf. So the destruction is crucial. Like John Boyd has this paper of destruction and creation. Like you have to give up your preconceptions, your old ideas of what was true in order to figure out what is true. If you hold on to these, so destruction is a prerequisite for creation. Absolutely. Joe.
So I'm sorry, because I've been thinking I had forgotten today is just about radiating out. So I had some questions about the periphery. So I'm going to hold off. I'm going to hold off till Wednesday.
Absolutely. All right. So let's go to the next stage. I'm going to talk about those 4 circles and the 4 dots. Jyoti talked about the evaluative part. Now this is about the evaluative part. So you can think of yourself, you can be in 4 different stages. You can be here. You can be here. So you can be on this circle. You can be on this circle. You can be on this circle, or you can be on this circle. Those are the 4 states. And the beautiful thing about this is that all of these have directions. Like all of these are not just like static positions, but these are functions that are doing something. Right here is when you're godlike. This is the Jungian archetype of hero. You know what you need to do, and you're doing it. And you're doing it in the right way, with the full of energy. This is the hero function. This is where you're godlike. This one in the second circle is when you're childlike, when you are the child of God, when you're focused on the center. So this is the hero, this is the child. Child is the father of the man. By being child continuously, you have the ability of being a hero. The moment you stop being a child, you stop being a hero. So this is the crucial creation which keeps the sustenance going. This third circle is what Jung calls the senex, or the old man. Imagine you, the old man in you, saying, oh, in our days, we used to do things like this. Okay, and you're holding on to this. Oh, this is how we always did this. This is how I am. I'm not comfortable doing anything else. That's what you are here. You're holding on to everything. okay? And you're slowly deteriorating. You think you're yourself, but you're actually going down and you don't even notice it, okay? And this is the rock bottom. This is what Jung calls the demon. This is your lowest point. This is the lowest point that you can reach. You can look at all these four things in terms of consciousness. Consciousness is this lighted part. This, the third part, the senex, the third circle, is unconscious. It is not really aware of who they are, what is going on. And this last part is actually anti-conscious. It is evading, it is trying to evade that you have fallen from life and you are in the process of dying and you're actively evading it. Here, you're not paying attention, you're unconscious. Here, you're anti-conscious. This path back, this destruction is making possible this child's new consciousness of saying, this is fresh awareness of reality, fresh focus on center, fresh new integrations being started here. And this is bringing those new integrations to life, implementing them in your thought, in your action, in your emotions, in your intuitions, in the world. That is the hero part. So there is the hero, there is the child, there is the senex, and there is the demon. Those are the four stages. Note that this is nothing to do with the strength you have, your abilities. This is what you're doing with it. So this is a way of evaluating yourself in terms of your own center. Suppose you're very, very good at thinking and you are using the thinking to rationalize whatever it is. Yes, you're strong, but you're being a demon. You may be very high on how well you are able to think, but you're using it destructively. Similarly with action, similarly with emotions, similarly with intuitions. So this is a question of, this is again, stresses the importance of center and loving the center. It is not about you. It is about your center. This whole diagram is about speaking to your center and listening, speaking and listening. Listening to the center and speaking from the center. And these are the four stages that you can be in. So first, I talked about the movements, like 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now I've said something about the states you can be in. And the states are across multiple areas of your life. So you can be here, you can be in the hero state, you can be in the child state, you can be in the senex state, and you can be in the demon state. This also varies by different areas of your life, and it can be applied at any time scale. You can look at your life as a whole. You can look at yourself as a child. You can look at yourself as you're listening to this presentation. What are you doing? Are you being here? Are you being here? Are you being here? Are you being here? Think of, like, I'm saying a sentence. I'm saying, what am I doing? Am I being here? Am I being here? You can evaluate it at any scale of time. This movement is all about time, and it works on any scale. And these different stages are evaluations of what you're doing with regard to the center. Here, you're moving towards the center. Here, you are moving from the center. Here, you're drifting away from the center. And here, you're saying no to the center. These are the four things you can be doing. All right, I'm going to open it up for any comments, any questions. go ahead and type an exclamation mark if you'd like to comment on this part. Sure.
So I think about the different states that we're in. I like how well we're doing something and the evaluation of that. So we may be thinking, and we may be very high level at, as you mentioned, at thinking, but it can still be destructive. And I think that this is actually where you start to see what it really means to be the center, and virtue actually starts to, you can kind of see where virtue comes into play here. I immediately thought of the yogas.
Let me interrupt you. I just want to
Please,
elaborate on
please,
what
by
you
all
said,
means.
because it's a crucial point. Like, for example, MBTI looks at strength. That's all they look at.
Right.
Okay. Whereas this entire diagram is really about virtue. And it is trying to see, is this taking you towards the center? Are you being a better person? Are you acting in accordance with the truth? Are you making world a better place? So that is the standard from which everything is being evaluated. Secondly, it emphasizes that virtue is one, the center is one, that doing something on just one thing and not paying attention to the rest, you are likely to be in the periphery, because our life is integrated. Us as a being, human being is an integrated being. The world is an integrated place. All of these things have to come together. Excellent point, Joe. Please go on.
No, I really like the idea, what you just said about MBTI just being, showing what you're doing, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily integrating it in with everything else, essentially a set of values.
Yes. So let me make one more point. Like, the modern culture is very much amoral. It is saying, if you say something should, people say, oh, don't say should, don't say that. Okay, so the idea of virtue is quite foreign. I remember somebody making a comment when I was saying that I was going to do a meeting on virtue. She says, that's very quaint. Nobody talks about virtue anymore. And that's actually true. And this, if you look at the scribal age, but you can see that in the Bible, in Tao Te Ching, and in Bhagavad Gita, and in Aristotle, and in Aquinas, all of these people, their entire thought is based on virtue. Again, using Jordan Peterson's terms, you can look at the world in two ways: a place of things or a forum for action. This is all about looking at the world as forum for action. Who am I and what should I do? This is a profoundly metaphysical and moral issue. Whereas, and metaphysical and moral, this is all about kind of final causes and formal causes, and those are not something, the modern world is not focused on that. It is focused on efficient and material causes. And those are all here in this periphery area. So in that sense, this is very much of revival of the scribal way of thinking about things, about seeing the integration between all our faculties. Please go on, Joe.
No, that was, I couldn't say it any more brilliantly myself. It is that's exactly where I was going to go with this, is that, I was going to see the yogas as a path, but you could also see this as material and efficient cause being on the periphery, where this is a fully integrated approach, where we have the purpose of something. And that's the question that we ought to be asking ourselves, is what is the actual purpose? What is the goal? Why are we living this way? I mean, it not only gives you an idea of where you are, but it also shows you why you're going, why it's important to go a certain direction. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you. So
that's okay, please.
the point that Napoleon Hill makes in Outwitting the Devil is that you have two choices. You can drift or have a definite purpose.
Right.
So that is a formulation of saying either you are pointed towards the center or you drift away. That's a brilliant way of putting it. You know, it is basically saying towards the center or away from the center. And drifting is just away from the center. What I have is a more nuanced way of showing that moving towards the center has multiple phases, like this stage and this stage, and moving away from the center, the same movement that took you here, if you hold on to it, leads you to drifting. So it's a further elaboration of those two things. But the primary movement is the radial movement. So it is either towards the center or away from the center. Joe, anything else?
No, I mean, it's just very well done, very well said.
Thank you. All right, if anybody else has anything, you're welcome to type exclamation mark. Otherwise, I'm going to start talking about how this diagram is divided. So now I've completed the point about movement. Okay, and no matter what you do with this diagram, always remember it's all about the center. It's all about the radial movement. Okay, if you have the radial movement, then everything else about the circular movement is handled by your focus on the center, because you will come to it. But at any point of time, you're just focused on this, the circular movement, and you're not noticed whether you're going away from the center or not going away from the center, then you're lost. Because it seems like you're doing something, which is what is, very common in modern times. You're just going from one thing to another, but you don't have a center towards which you're going. So the radial movement is the primary. So I would say two formulations. One is loving the center. Love the center. That's the first principle. Okay. The second principle is radial before circular. So always focus on the radial first, of what is happening at the radial level. So it's like, are you here? Are you trying to go towards the center? Are you speaking from the center? Are you drifting away from the center? Are you saying no to the center? That is the first thing. And then you can look at in what way you're doing it and how is it interacting with other things. Because if you just look at the interaction, then you're going to miss this movement, whether you're going to be going towards the center or away from the center, which is the whole purpose. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the next stage, where I'm going to talk about the circular part, but I'm going to do it in stages. So you can divide this diagram into two vertically like this. Okay, the left side is the yin and the right side is the yang. Okay, so this is bringing in listening, being receptive is yin, and being more aggressive, transforming is the yang. So this is yin and this is yang. So you can divide it this way. So that's, kind of implementing Tao Te Ching. Again, look at Tao Te Ching, the beauty of Tao Te Ching. Let's actually compare all three: Bhagavad Gita, Bible, and Tao Te Ching. Tao Te Ching is the simplest of the three. But look at how profound it is. It has gotten the center and the periphery. Tao is the center. This is the 10,000 things out here in the periphery. A sage listens to the Tao and acts from the Tao. This is Wu Wei. This part is Wu Wei. This is being attached to 10,000 things. So that is the Tao in this diagram. Now, so that is the left side and the right side. At the other extreme, you can see Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is far more sophisticated. It is saying that, you know, there are these 4 parts, at least 4 parts. And let me describe to you how you can get towards the center on each of these paths. This part is the Bhakti Yoga. This part is the Dhyana Yoga or Raja Yoga. This part is the Jnana Yoga or knowledge, self-knowledge. And this is the Karma Yoga. Okay, so it is, and it talks about the relationships between them and how you can get to the center through any of these paths, and how being on one of these paths, you make progress on the other paths. They come together. So it is more integrated. Now, the Bible is primarily Bhakti Yoga. It is the strongest component of Bible, strongest thrust of it is Bhakti Yoga. It is believing in Jesus, of saying, this is the direction, focus on it, be a child of God. And so that's just a quick look at it. So it is like Bhagavad Gita is far, you know, it has lots of things, for example, to say about concentration of attention, direction of attention, which neither Tao or the Bible focuses on. It has a very elaborate, Bhagavad Gita has a very elaborate way of thinking about knowledge, self-knowledge. It respects asking of questions, of saying, I don't understand this, you know, I am lost. Arjuna again and again says, look, I'm lost. You're saying this and you're saying this. This is obviously contradictory. And this is talking to God. Okay, and that is perfectly all right. So there are differences in how these different works handle it. But I digress. So first, I want to divide it into this vertically. Okay, so it's yin and yang. The second division is the horizontal division. If you put a horizontal line here, this is action. So life starts with action. So even a single-celled organism is full of action. Then is F. That's the feeling. That's the feedback. So organisms with primitive consciousness, even, you know, way before man. This is even at a you know, lower than primate level, at a let's say mammalian level. Mammalian brain has this part. The upper part is there uniquely in human beings. Intuition, of being able to focus your attention, bring the entire capability of the right brain to bear on a problem, create possibilities of what is there, and to think through things, asking what is true, and then saying, so what should be done and how to plan action. All of that is quintessentially human. So there is a progression in this direction. So S, F, N, and T. I'm using Jung's functions. So the first division is the vertical division. So this is NF on one side, which is the receptive, yin, and then TS on the other side, which is the yang. Then there is this division, you know, this way, horizontally, between SF, which is the older parts of us. And remember that these older parts are the base on which the newer parts sit. So this is the elephant and the rider. The thing below this line is the system 1 largely, and above this line is system 2. So this is, you know, kind of system 1, system 2. This part is the right brain, this part is the left brain. So these are very general terms. I'm just looking at patterns that are common to various ways that people have formulated these things. But those are the divisions. So there is yin and yang, there is system 1 and system 2, very generally here. Now you can divide it into 4 parts. Next. Jung calls this green S, or action. The Bhagavad Gita calls it the Karma Yoga. Now remember, Bhagavad Gita is very moral. So Bhakti Yoga is in here, not, this is saying go towards this. It's all, yoga is the way. It is really the way. So it is basically virtue. So Karma Yoga is a virtue. If you want to use the term, translate it, it is a virtue. The second virtue is the Bhakti Yoga, which is F. But F, as described by Jung, describes mostly this part of virtue. It's not focused on saying, how does your emotional makeup come together so that you have devotion towards things? And what is the place of that devotion? How crucial it is in the context of human life. Whereas Bhakti Yoga is all about the virtue of having devotion towards the center. This part is N. This quadrant is N, intuition in Jung's terminology. And this part over here is what is called Dhyana Yoga. It's all about directing your attention onto something. This part is T in Jung's terminology, thinking. And it is the Jnana Yoga, which is focused on the knowledge of the center, knowledge of your center. So this is the 4-part division. Now, I want to point out, so just at this level, I want to talk about these loops. So please notice that this heart which is there is only 1 of 8 in this diagram. And you can be going on these paths, any of these paths. So think of like when you are trying to see what you're doing, you can actually go, okay, I'm now thinking about this. Now suddenly I'm saying, okay, how do I feel about this? And now I'm saying, so what should I need to do? So you can see yourself moving in attention between these things. And so the next stage is to see your movement along these 4 parts. You can start by doing it by 2 parts. So you can look at just yin and yang. You can talk about listening and speaking. You can evaluate by saying, okay, am I listening enough? Am I speaking enough? Because if you don't listen enough, that's not good. If you don't speak enough, that's not good either. So you have to have that. Like sometimes when you're speaking, it's like, okay, am I listening to what the world is saying? Okay. So here I want to stress the listening part. Like for example, like the in Om, so you say Om, and then when you're breathing in, you are actually listening to Om. So you're saying, what is the center saying to me? As you know, just so that listening and speaking go together. So these are kind of the rudimentary ways of describing these circular dimensions. So I've divided into 2 vertically and horizontally, and then I've talked about the 4 parts. So again, I want to open it up for any comments or any questions. Evanique.
Yeah, so looking at this and remembering what Yogeshwar was talking about in the Gita meetups, you know, the whole thing about releasing what you know, and you know, your intelligence, and using your intelligence and using what you know peripherally to come to the center. It really struck me in this diagram we were talking about it because of the integration of all of, you know, the top, the bottom, the left, and the right. And I think what you explain here is what you need all four. You know, sometimes we think, oh, I test INTJ, and I think, I always think that that's me somehow, and then it's not, because you need action, you need to think, you need the knowledge, you need the action, you need to believe. Um, you need all those things to integrate and to bring you towards the center. It's, I mean, like, even though there are different paths, I think you said it earlier, even though there's the different paths that bring you towards the center, you kind of need things from all four paths at the same time. Like, you can use Jnana Yoga, you know, your knowledge, but, you know, I think it says in the Bible, you know, faith without action is dead. So you can use Bhakti Yoga and you can sit there, but if you see something going on and you don't do anything, and you can do something, I think that's the key, knowing when you can do something about it and you don't, it kind of takes you away from the center. And like you said, even if you're like a thinker, you can think your way out of the center and into the periphery. So I love the integration of this presentation.
Wonderful, thank you. So I want to talk about this one part about the relationship between these four quadrants and these movements. Okay, this is it's a very tricky point, very deep point. You can think of these quadrants as places. So you can look at it as like different states, okay, in which you can move about. But you, as a human being, are moving. So identify yourself not with a particular quadrant, but as this moving part that is moving towards the center. And you can see that all movements in this, there is no single line, straight line. It's all curvilinear, that you have to go through. You can't really do everything just by thinking. You really need to be acting. Your emotions are going to be engaged. You have to use your intuition to some way, in some way. So the movement is circular and you are going through these. Now, it is true that you will spend more time in one of the quadrants, in one of the states. So it's like land. Okay, this, you can think of these four quadrants as land. And you as a being that is moving through all of these. So you do not identify, like, to kind of say that I'm a ENTJ or something like that. The problem with that is that you're saying that I'm fixed to this land, okay, that I live here. And the moment you say that, and you're certainly not saying that, obviously, but what I'm saying is that the general kind of modern way of thinking about things is to identify, saying, okay, I like, lots of MBTI people say, oh, I'm like this. Now, the problem with that is that that's like land. That's like feudalism, of saying, you are bound to this land now, okay? That these other people are enemies, you know, other people. Whereas what this is saying is that this is a free country. You go wherever you need to go, and you do whatever you need to do. And you move by the principle of moving towards the center. And many times you have to go through other lands. There are other people who are good at those things. So you're interacting, trading with them in order to move towards the center. So that of kind of separating that this is space. So another way of thinking about it is space and time. The circular is the space. So these quadrants are space. Life is movement in time. So you are actually living on this curve, and you can be at different parts of the curve. So you identify yourself with this curve of moving relative to the center. And you, wherever you are, it doesn't, that doesn't matter that much. It's the fact that you are, so that's the difference I'm trying to point out between kind of the space and time. It's a complicated point. I'm not sure I'm explaining it well. Ebony, does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, it relates. I think it was either Thursday or Friday in the meetup where you guess what was talking about the river. It was river dissolving into the ocean, and you taking that first step out, and then you go, like, it's like taking your first step off a lane. Like, you can't stay on the lane forever because you'll be in the periphery. And he used the example of ice. When you're ice, you can't stay in one place or you'll remain ice. When you go towards the river, you start melting, and eventually you melt into the ocean, which is kind of like the center or the Brahma. So it actually kind of integrated into that as well.
Beautiful. That's a great example. So again, kind of applying it to Gita, what it is saying is that this center has produced all of this. This is the source of all of this diagram. And it is that ocean. And when you are sitting here, you have the illusion that you are a being by itself, but you are actually part of this whole thing. When you are focused on the center, when you move towards the center, you realize that you are part of the ocean. This is all one thing. And these lines are your kind of the interaction between the ocean and this drop that is going on. So that, and this oneness, kind of the lightedness over here, comes from that, of kind of experiencing that oneness. But beautiful put. Thank you. Thank you. Next up is going to be Jyoti, Brian, and Katie. Jyoti, what do you think? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jyoti.
Okay, I was able to unmute now. I see this as a beautiful diagram of self-improvement, but I can see, even as a person who has had so much gyan knowledge from you about the diagrams, about the core, periphery, and the archetypes and everything, I might need help, or anybody over here, when one sees oneself drifting a little bit. I might need help from a person who's a little more advanced than me to bring me back to the center. Because sometimes things happen in your life, you feel you are out of control. You know how to get to the center, and you have the knowledge to get to the center, and you have the value of getting back to the center. But you may need somebody who's more advanced than yourself and who has a knowledge like yourself to bring you back. I can see that as a little problem, because the society that we are dealing with, everybody is not knowledgeable about this. Actually, what they are knowledgeable about is pulling you out from where you are, not giving any appreciation to the center that you are holding on to. And that I can see that as not a problem, but time consuming. Like, you need to go back, you need to really do it, and you know it, you are alone in this process. If you don't have anybody like yourself to help you back in, then it's time consuming. You have to stay stuck for a while until you think, no, I'm ready to move. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a very deep issue. I mean, what has happened is that, cultures differ quite a bit. And I think in the modern culture, most people are focused on the periphery. So the idea of, and by being focused on the periphery means that you're drifting by its nature. And you consider that drifting is normal. and that's what you do. So that's the kind of modern context. So in that sense, so I would say several things. So one part of it is that this was not always so. So there are cultures, there have been cultures like these tribal cultures where this idea of being focused on the center was much more prominent and much more, that's what the culture thought that you should be doing. Like, how can you be moral was a crucial issue. Okay, so there have been times. Secondly, lot of the work you have to do by yourself. Like ultimately a person can kind of show you this and show you that, but ultimately you have to do it yourself. So that's one part of it. Secondly, that other people can help you a lot, and they can help you. Like so there are many things that can be said. I'm not sure I'm going to answer this very well, but so one part of it is that for me personally, friends who are stronger at things that I'm weaker at have been very useful. And it's mutual. It's like, it's not just one way. It is both ways. And so actually listening to other people, and they don't even have to tell you or give you particularly, but you just listen to them of saying, you say, okay, this person is handling this really well. You notice it, and and for them, it can be very easy to actually help you because they are very strong at that. And they can really help you with very little. That can go a long way. So there is all of that. I think it is important that, that kind of each person take the primary responsibility of going towards the center and realize that we are all very similar, and keeping your heart open to other people who are different than you, who are all pointed towards the center. So I think there is a lot to be gained by people focused on the center who are very different from each other. Because what it does is that it just through example and through learning and interacting, we can pick up things. This is not a very good answer, but that's all I have for right now. Next up is Brian, followed by Katie and Joe. Brian.
This is Penny. I just had a question as you went through it. I mean, in general, I thought it was great. But on the quadrant, that's the intuition, the N quadrant. Could you talk again about what the Gita says about that and the yoga that is inherent in that quadrant?
Sure. So that is the thing that we have not covered very well, that Gita doesn't focus on much.
Okay.
But it's a very large part of the Indian tradition. By the way, Gita focuses only on 4 of these 8 things very well. Okay, not all 8. There are other systems which do a better job than Gita on focusing on those other 4. Okay, so just as a teaser. But let me tell you about this. So this light magenta is what I'm talking about. This is Dhyana Yoga. This pertains to attention. And this is about training your attention so that it is focused, that it is concentrated. So this is your ability of doing dhyan, of ability of concentrating. Now that is a very large part, a crucial part of Indian tradition, which Gita doesn't go into much. Gita focuses a lot on Bhakti Yoga, which is here. It focuses a lot on Karma Yoga, which is here. It focuses a lot on Jnana Yoga, which is here. This one is Dhyana Yoga, or also called Raja Yoga. The work that focuses, that is a primary source for this, is Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. Hopefully at some point we will do that. And this is particularly important because there is no equivalence of that in the Western context, Western corpus. There is no equivalent of that in the Chinese concept, Chinese corpus of saying, how do you learn to do this? How do you learn to focus your attention? Gita touches upon it, but it's the briefest of the four main quadrants. Penny, does that answer?
Where meditation would be?
Yes, that's where meditation is.
Okay.
But meditation, as is seen in the West, is not really focused on this, because meditation is of two kinds. There is the Buddhist-based meditation, which is all about awareness of just being aware of what is going on. This is mindfulness meditation, which is very much in the Buddhist tradition, which is all about the dynamics on making peace with the dynamics of your consciousness. This meditation is what is called concentration meditation, which is not part of the Buddhist tradition, which is not typically the part of, this is not the heart of the Buddhist tradition. It is the heart of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And that exactly is what he's talking about. So for example, Arjun is famous, the most famous story about Arjun is that of Arjun and the eye of the parrot. So he says that, when he's taking an aim, I'm going to shorten it. When he's taking an aim, all he can see is the eye of the parrot, because that's what he's shooting. That is exactly what the concentration meditation is. And it is integrated with all these other things. It's not just about sitting and meditating. It is about the eye of the parrot. Is that what you need to, how do you direct your attention, regardless of what you're thinking, what you're doing, what you're feeling. So this is, it's like a general purpose tool. Thanks. Next up is Katie, followed by Joe. Katie.
Well, I think for me, I really enjoying what you're saying about the thinking versus the action. You could have like your actions could be good. I think for me, it might be like my actions would be good, but then might be with a nice person, bhakti yoga would feel very natural. And then with someone where it's more difficult, I would see the center and but I wouldn't be feeling bhakti yoga towards the person. So I'm wondering, my question really, if you're taking questions, is like, you don't want to force yourself. Like I can see this, I can feel the center, or what I perceive to be the center. But you don't want to force yourself something that you're not feeling towards something. You want to keep, sometimes it's, more realistic to be like, well, I'm going to, keep in mind principles and values, but I don't have to force myself to feel something that I don't towards, and someone who's not practicing it themselves. Right.
So, I mean, no, absolutely. So like when you look at the dialogue between Krishna and Arjun, this is very clear. Like what Krishna is offering Arjun are these multiple paths. So you can go like this, you can go like this, you can go like this, you can be here and you can still do this, and you can be on this path and you can continue to be this Senex old man up to here, and then you suddenly notice this and you come back over here. So it's like all of these possibilities. So you have to be true to yourself. You have to move towards the center as best as you can. You have certain strengths, you have certain weaknesses, you have certain ways of doing things, and you kind of have to work with them to move towards the center as best as you can. So it is very much kind of redemptive and liberating. It gives you the full freedom. But what it is doing, what this diagram is doing, and what Bhagavad Gita is doing, is that they're just mapping things out for you. And they're saying, if you do this, this is the consequence. You have the ability of doing this. Do what you can. So that's how Bhagavad Gita looks at it. Next up is Joe, followed by Jyoti. Joe.
So I have a quick question. you know, the Gita fits into this very well. I can see that very clearly. Believe it or not, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the Tao and order and chaos. So how does order and chaos kind of map into?
Right. Those
Yes.
are, I would say, much more kind of disintegrated ways of looking at it.
Okay.
Because what happens is that, like, order and chaos, right? The let's think about it. So chaos is all the possibilities. Now, order can be of two things. So let's look at it this way. Okay. Let's look at the story of Osiris.
Okay.
Okay. And let's look at order and chaos through this. Osiris is this right here. He's the Senex, okay, who has basically was a hero once, but he has gotten old and he can no longer, center is not the order, Katie. It's different. So let me elaborate. The center is basically like the universal principle that is guiding everything. So it is in the center and it is the cause of everything. Another way of thinking about it is that you can think of it in terms of energy. All the energy is coming from the center. And a good form is the one which is completing the energy circuit, that is going back to the center and refeeding it. That's so you can look at it in energy way that way. But let me look at the story of Osiris. So Osiris was a great king. So he was a hero once who built this great empire over here. This is Egypt at its height. But he's getting old and set in his ways and unaware of what is going on. Okay, so he's here. He had a brother called Seth, who's right here, is the demon. Okay, so Osiris is a Senex, is the demon, and he's pointed this way. He wants to take everything that has been created and just run it down to his own advantage. Okay, so he kills Osiris, but Osiris is married to Isis. Isis represents creation. What she does is that she takes the pieces of Osiris, which are here. She brings together all these pieces of Osiris, uses it to create a new hero, who is Horus. Horus is the son of Osiris, so he has all this order, civilization that Osiris had built, and the consciousness of creating new things. So you can see so in the story, this is Horus, the hero. This is the creation, which is Isis, which produces new life. This is Osiris, and this is Set. Now, order is not a good word because it simply means form. It doesn't distinguish between living form and form which is dead. So the order, so if you look at order as living order, then chaos, which is all of the potential, you can do this. You can use the chaos just like Isis did in order to create a new order. So these terms, what we have here in this diagram, are clearer way of thinking about chaos. So chaos and order. So chaos is basically things that are not focused on the center, that are just here. So you can see that all of this, you can think of it as just chaos because they are not cohering to the center. Order, if you want to use it in terms of the form that follows function, then order is only within this radiant circle. So the second level circle, that is the order, and outside is chaos. So that's one way of looking at it. But because this way of thinking about it, of saying that this is the life and this part of order, this is the form that is responsive to life, is continuing to listen to the function. That is a much more, I think, precise way of thinking about this problem than order and chaos. So what do you think, Joe? Does that make any sense?
Yes, no, it makes perfect sense. So, I mean, that was beautifully put. So that is especially the story of, the example of Isis and how she instituted order from chaos. And it is much deeper in the sense that it gives you a much more nuanced approach to looking at order and chaos. It actually incorporates the entire process and of known and unknowns. So you can kind of see that was that was pretty impressive, actually.
Well, thank you. I mean, I was impressed myself, because it's like,
You should be, because it was, and I'm not just saying that, it was really good. I was thinking halfway through that was very, very good.
well, thank you. Next up is Jyoti.
Okay, segue to Katie's comment about can't force yourself to do something that you don't believe in. My take on this and this diagram, the reason I am learning about it over and over, what Shrikant is trying to help us understand, is about the belief in the correct belief system. If you are stuck somewhere that I cannot do bhakti yoga or karma yoga because I really don't believe in it, you have to make an effort to set that aside and say, I'm not, although I don't believe it in, but because it is the correct way there is a correct way of thinking in this diagram, I am going to try to do it because it will help me to get my thought processes and my actions back into a positive action. This is how I look at Gita and what I'm learning from Gita and what I'm learning from diagrams. Perhaps there will be several times that I will say, this is not doable, but I still want to do it because I know that it has been, it is so much work and effort has been paid into it from the ancient scriptures and how we are, Shrikant is deriving it from there, that there is some good in it. So I would say in the beginning, you might feel like you're forcing yourself to do something, but then because it is a good thing to follow, good thing to do, you might want to do it. And this is what I did with my meditation. Years and years ago when I was younger, I knew people who were meditating and they were saying good things about it, but I couldn't get myself to sit and concentrate and do it. And now it is so automatic that it lightens my muscles, it lightens my head. And now I'm doing it with the diagram, inhaling and exhaling. And it is giving me a new perspective, what I'm taking in and what I'm bringing back to it. So I would say with people like Katie, not you necessarily, everybody who doesn't want to do it, maybe should do it, discipline one's mind to do it and see what comes out of it. And I can promise you, good things will come. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. So I'll say a couple of things. I mean, one part of it is that this is simply mapping out reality, of just kind of acknowledging what is, of saying that these are parts of us as human beings. These are parts of us as a society. This is the part of the world. This is the part of our core. This is what is. Now, our facility and our comfort level with each of them is going to be different. And there is tremendous value of actually listening to other people. I mean, I could not have done any of this if we had not gone through Tao Te Ching or the Gospel of John and the Gospel of John and Bhagavad Gita, because they have given me a completely fresh perspective on things. Modern world is focused on just these things outside. This entire radiant thing is missing from it. Not just the center is missing, but a lot of the radiant thing is missing. And actually it's not missing, it is there, but it is there intermittently with few people here and there. And then most people are living on the inertia that is created from it, just holding on to the products. Whereas these works in the scribal era is all about individuals trying to be like that. The second part of it is that it does, I mean, what happens is that the study of this kind, like I can speak for myself, and I invite other people to do that. Like Tao Te Ching, Gospel of John, and Bhagavad Gita, all three of them have had a profound impact on me. And just listening to them with an open heart and open mind, and trying to formulate it in your own words, that is speaking from them, is a transformative experience. And I'm very different as a result of that. And it is true that, I mean, the core idea of the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is that you basically do the best thinking you can, and you act based on it, though it doesn't feel right at that particular point of time. And that actually transforms the emotions. There is that loop from cognition to behavior to emotion. Most people kind of wait to feel right before they do anything. And many times it never happens, because there is a certain inertia that our feelings have, our habits have, that is self-reinforcing. And if you want to make a radical change, you have to be open. And I'm not saying, so I'm saying use these works and this diagram and the works. This diagram is like a way of summarizing all of these things. Okay, much deeper kind of works. This is like the tip of the iceberg. Okay, but bringing all of that into your life in modern times, it's like retrieving this scribal age. It's retrieving a very different way of thinking, which is, I think, profoundly life-giving. And that's what we're trying to do. Thank you, Jyoti, and thank you, Katie. Next up is Joe, followed by Evanik. Joe.
Actually, you can skip me.
Evanik.
So one of the things I see when you were talking, and when Jyoti and Katie were talking, is the Gita has you accept reality for what it is. And, really accepting what it is part of that is just desiring. I'm trying to think it out. So when you're accepting what it is, you're not desiring what's not. So sometimes we wish a situation could be different, but it's not. And wishing for or desiring it to be different isn't going to make the difference. It's just accepting the reality for what it is and living the life based on the reality that it is right now. And then, improving your life that way. So it's not changing the reality, it's changing how you deal with the reality. And I think that's part of going to the center too, is this is what's there, and this is how I'm going to react to it. And this is how I'm going to accept what's there. I use an example like sickness, accepting what the diagnosis is and, wishing it away is going to help. like getting treatment for it if you can, and doing what you need to do to get treatment for it. That's what's going to help. It's not just sitting there and blindly thinking, you know, thinking it away, or, thinking positive thoughts. Like when people say that, that's not what's going to get you there. It's doing the treatment and taking the action. And you can be positive about the action that you're taking, but accepting that this is the reality, and not, and not even questioning why is it happening to you, or all those things that you can question about situations or things that happen to you. You could just accept that this is what it is at this moment. And I think that could bring a certain amount of peace, and that could bring you closer to the center. So
Wonderful.
that.
Beautifully put. Absolutely. This, acceptance comes before anything else. Just acceptance of what is comes before anything else. The second point, I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday. What happens is that if you're strong at something, like typically there is this axis. If you're strong at, for example, let's say NE, extroverted intuition of seeing possibilities, you're likely to be less disciplined about doing things. Okay, so there are all these kind of dynamics between this. But at the same time, you really need that in order to do well. Okay, so if you make, even if you are at 10%, and if you get only to 20%, that's going to have a profound impact on your life. So it's like you have to so firstly, accept that these are all aspects of yourself. Okay, and that's the starting point. Also accept that, where you're strong, where you're weak. Try to be as honest as possible. Then notice the strengths in other people, because that gives you a much more kind of concretized way. I found it particularly useful of seeing what is possible, and then maybe make some improvements on places where you're weak. That makes a lot more, and all of it, again, kind of stressing the point that Ebony had made earlier, or Joe had made. This entire way of looking at it is very much redemptive and liberating, because what it is saying is that this is what it is. This is what it is, and you are where you are. Just see where you are, see what you can do, and do the best you can, and keep moving towards the center as best as you can. Don't be afraid, try to stretch yourself the way you can on various things. So that's what I would say. Next up is going to be Joe.
Interesting in thinking about it, coming back to this idea of beliefs and how it relates to drifting. It's an important link that we talked about a little bit earlier about, you're talking about proximity and how our belief systems are formed, are being informed by what we're experiencing, and being open. And this links back to also the relationship that the transformative part of the Tao, the Bible, and the Gita is being open in this. But if you're allowing your beliefs to be dictated by desires and objects, which is the periphery, then you're going to be stuck in that drifting phase that we talked about in the second, as the second movement, that you're going further away from the center. So that there's this, but it's your belief system and what is good and what is bad, and it's taking you away from who you are, your values, and what you actually, your own personal character as well. So I think that that's a very important part when we're talking about beliefs. It's not only beliefs, it's beliefs in what we value, because it's what is good and bad. Because if you value things that are external or on the periphery, then in that particular instance, you'll never be satisfied. You'll constantly be drifting. You'll have a constant drift from the center. However, if you value things I got to use it, the dichotomy of control within your control, that, your values, your character, things along those lines, then you'll come back to the center, to who you are. And but again, it comes down to what you believe, and you really have to examine that. And then you have to distinguish between objects in the world and who you are. So I think that beliefs is a very important part of this process that we talked about, because it can be destructive. And we've talked about how it can be destructive, how moderns look at the world, and how we look, how more of an integrative approach looking at the world. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting relationship that we could talk about, that
Wonderful.
was brought up.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. So regarding dichotomy of control, I think what it is saying, what this diagram is saying, is that you can be a child anytime. Anytime you choose, you can focus on the center. You can love the center. So it's like that ability to focus on the center is with you. That is within your control all the time. So you can put yourself here in a second, or if you or don't do that, or not do that. That is the choice that you have. You really don't have a choice of what ideas you have at a given point. You have the ideas that you have. Okay, you have certain feelings, you have those feelings. You're doing something, you're doing something, you have certain intuitions, you have certain intuitions. But that awareness, that kind of the seat of the will, is your capacity of paying attention. And paying attention to the center, asking, what is the core of my being? Who am I? What is the center? Just that question. And it's going to produce dramatically different results at each different moment, at each different time, because it is going to speak to what you need to focus on. And how do you need to make the center fully manifest in your life. So that, I think, that you can be a child anytime is really the heart of the seed. That's the seed germ from which everything else you produce by you focusing on the center. So in that sense, this is the most important point in the diagram. And that is something that is not there over time. It doesn't matter what your background is, doesn't matter where you are. This is something that you can do anytime. And that is the source of everything that the rest of your life is going to be. It's like the summation of what you did, what you do regarding this over your time. So this is really the heart of the whole diagram. All right, so I would like any comments on overall how this presentation was, and then I will close by telling you what I'm going to do on what I'm going to do day after tomorrow. So how was it? It's been a long time. I've been away for a long time, so it was wonderful to come back and talk about this. So go ahead, Evanique, how was it?
It was great. It was wonderful. I got so much from the presentation. In particular, looking at all of the different religions we've been studying, the Gita, the Bible, and how it integrates. I love the heart. I'll say that again. I love the heart shape, because to me, it shows the flow from the center to the periphery and back. And I like the simple fact that it all can lead you back to the center. Another thing that I love was the concept of destruction and creation, because, I think in a sense, certain things have to go to the periphery in order to be destroyed. And you have to notice that that form that you were using may not be useful anymore. And I think that produces a sense of freedom, because when you have to let go, and we were talking about this in the Gita as well, when you have to let go of what you know, and your intelligence and everything that you value within the periphery. And you have to kind of let that go. That has to be destroyed. It served you at one point. But it's when it's no longer serving you, when it's no longer bringing you to the center, you have to listen and observe in order to see that and to let that go and let that be destroyed. And you're right, it's hard because it's something that we kind of can use to protect us. That form could be that form that protected us through a certain time and got us through a certain hard part of our life. But at the end, it now no longer suits us, it hinders us. So I thought the presentation was great. I'm looking forward to Wednesday. Welcome back. Missed you so much. I don't know if I can emphasize that enough, how much I missed you. Like, oh my God, I'm so excited that you're back. But thank you for today. This was really great and awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Avanique. It is wonderful to be back. It's like, I've been thinking about all these things. I should say this, but I had to kind of build all of it. Thank you. Next up is Jyoti.
Yeah, I'm like Avanique too. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. We really missed you. What I was going to say was you are definitely doing a fantastic job. And every time you come, I'm pleasantly surprised because there's some addition you are made that makes me understand even better. And that makes me, helps me to, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that. So I don't know if you remember, I wrote you about the transgender. And I think people who live in the periphery, they think when the gender, when children or adolescents, they want to make a change in their gender, something changes in their core. The core is a core. Core does not change because you have changed your gender. And people who are rejecting these transgenders and against the LBT and all that, they're not understanding that. They're just looking at them and rejecting them, and they're not taking into consideration that they all have a soul. They all have a center. It's just a matter of their appearance. And appearance, according to Hinduism or many other cultures, it's of no value because what goes with you is your soul. So, I feel sometimes that maybe you should write a book like this with your diagrams and explanations that you are doing so that the whole society gets to see this and value a human being. Well, there are all these fights in Ukraine, the war in Ukrainian. What is this? This doesn't mean anything. It's the people, human beings, their center. That's more important. Let's come together. This is one way we can get our society together. So anyway, you're making me transforming me into a very good human being. I can tell you that. I can speak for everybody else, but here, the people who are here, I can see them. I relate to them just the way they speak, they explain, and I feel so good. I say, you know what? These are very bright, wisdom, wise people. They're thinking in the right direction. They have a good belief system. They have a correct belief system. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jyoti. Absolutely. I think these lessons are very deep. This is really the kind of core of the wisdom. And I think in the diagram, it is far more accessible to people, I think.
Right.
It speaks across all the ideas that people have, all the views that they have. It's very simple and it brings together so many things. And it is getting better and better, I think. I was quite pleasantly surprised of how easily I could put in the Osiris story in there on the fly. It is, and it maps perfectly, actually, perfectly. So that's a good sign that things are coming together. And I do have, I have about 25 different things to do in order to develop this further. Kind of integration with basically I'm going to integrate it with all the main systems of ideas that I have learned and have found useful. So Louis Sullivan was one. You can see how much he transformed the diagram. And that's exactly what is going to happen. I want to go and do the integration with Tao Te Ching, with the Gospel of John, with Bhagavad Gita in a much more detailed way. There are new ideas that I'm working on. Lots of others. I have like a whole list of about 25 different things that I'm going to do. And I definitely want to make it public at some point. I think that I'm still learning. This is like a good start, but I think it needs to be, I can make it far more powerful because I can see it just by the transitions. You know, I keep working on it, and I think it's getting better and better because it is capturing so much in one place. It's like the idea of having multiple perspectives, but all these models, multiple perspectives, are being brought in. Instead of saying, okay, I'm going to look at these 12 separate perspectives, all the 12 perspectives are integrated into one diagram, and you can use any of them at any time. So what it does is that it's like, you know, Leonardo da Vinci has he's one of my favorites, and he has this idea of excellences upon excellences, where you just pack all the excellences in this one thing. That's what he does in his paintings. And he says that then it becomes like a prison of attention, he calls it, of saying, because it is so interesting that every time you focus on it, you start seeing new things. So it's almost like a living thing that is interacting with you. That's what you're trying, that's what the aim is. And so I really look forward to developing it. And Jyoti, I really appreciate all your encouragement and all your feedback, because I want to see how different people are using it, how they're finding it useful. And I want to integrate all of that as I go on. Thank you. Next up is, let's go with Brian, followed by Joe. Brian or Penny.
Yeah, no, I thought it was fantastic. And I really liked, the diagram. It's really becoming much easier to understand. And I was going through some of my notes. So I want to show you, I don't know if you can see, this is, no, I guess you can't really see. But when you started out, there was like a star with a circle with a little star in it. And then this one, you had like a rectangle with some little lines drawn on it. And I was like, wow, that's where we started before. And the star, I don't think really meant anything as a form. It was just like there's a star with a circle, and so it's just so much more comprehensible now, and you can really start relating to the different areas. And before, it was kind of like there was no movement. It was very static, and but this is so much more comprehensive.
Yes.
Like there was no periphery, I think, in the beginning diagrams. It didn't exist. You were kind of just in the center. But anyway, I really think it's great.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Brian, do you have anything to say? What did you think?
Well, number one, I think it's amazing, and I am just looking, I think it'd be a great blessing for me to participate in the further development of the charts. I'm looking forward and hopeful about that. An incidental thing is just an incidental comment. I think it's really wonderful you were able to share this with your parents. It must have been very gratifying for you and for them to have that experience.
Oh yeah, no. My parents watch all my meetups, the diagram meetups, each and every one of them. So they're very familiar with the whole history of this. And there are many things that I've not talked about. And one of the things I'm trying to integrate is to look at this as an energy system, like the dynamo being at the center, and then it is kind of pumping out energy, and you really need the energy to come back to complete the center. Otherwise, it's always like the darkness at the end is where the energy is dissipated, or it is, so it has to keep coming back. So it is kind of seeing it as like an energy system. And my dad is an electrical engineer, so he had lots of interesting things to say about insulation. What is the purpose of insulation? Like, for example, law is insulation. It's to make sure that when a contract is made, that you get this from that. Or even morality is a kind of insulation of saying that you will do the right thing. You will not hurt other people. And when you're dealing with somebody who is moral, you have a basis of dealing, because you know that whatever you're doing, doing, it's going to come back to you in some form or the other. It doesn't matter what form, but it's going to come back to you. Whereas when you're dealing with bad people, you know that whatever you're giving is going to actually come and hurt you. The same energy you're giving them is going to actually be used against you. So all of that, what kind of, another way of thinking about this is like different modes of energy. Like thought is one kind of energy. Physical action is another kind of energy. Emotions is another kind of energy. The intuition is another kind of energy, and they interact. All of them are going at the same time. So how do they interact with one another? And what is the right hookup of energy for it to work properly? So there is this entire system of energy, and he had amazing things to say about that. And
I have since you're talking about the energy, I'll say I do have my I've already said it earlier in another meeting, but I do have an understanding of what you're presenting. It's not inconsistent, but it just kind of adds. I see the center as kind of the sun, in that, and there are two kinds of energy in the sun. I thought of this with you're talking about the radial. There are two kinds of energy that come out of the sun. One is gravity that goes in towards the sun, and the other is light that goes out, and it behaves in exactly the ways you're talking about. And then the other thing about the sun, as I mentioned earlier, there's something that happens in the individual. Like you say, you have to experience it yourself. You have to do the work yourself. Or, in these wisdom traditions, it can't be described. It can only be indicated. There's something going on at the center. It's like the sun is something going on in the center of the sun. It's more chemical. It's a tremendous energy, a transforming energy, and an integrative transforming chemical energy, which is different from the gravity and light that's being emitted. So if you're just looking at the sun, you're experiencing the gravity and the light, but you are not doing your own transformation necessarily.
Excellent point. So let me say something, like to look at it in the context of the diagram. Let me just bring that up quickly. So you can look at what is going on inside this radiant circle versus what is outside. Okay, so think of this whole thing as the sun. What is happening here in virtue is that there is a different kind of exchange of energy going on. There is what Brian is calling like chemical exchange. What is happening is that all the virtues actually merge into one. Here you're saying, okay, this is the thought. You're saying this is the action. Whereas when you're talking about the virtue as dedication or discipline, and this as truth, like truth and discipline, they come together. They become one. So it becomes like this white light until right here in the sun, it becomes all in one. Like this is Brahma. From this is created everything from it. So the way it is, there is this, as you go closer to the center, as you go inside here, let's look at inside here and inside here as two different things. Inside here, the cohesion and the interaction between the parts is far more fluid. They are, the energy is flowing from your thoughts to your feelings, to your intuitions, through your actions, so that they are kind of amalgamated as this one thing, as one character. Imagine like Jesus or Krishna. In them, you see everything. everything together, the single expression actually is capturing, is radiating all of these things. When you're standing outside the fire, then you're looking at it as, you're not in the heat. You're actually not trying to do anything. You're like watching TV, okay? And sometimes you're even distracted and you're looking elsewhere, okay? But the sun, that is exactly what this kind of cohesion, this is like a synergy of these various things. And the important thing is that when that happens, what it produces is orders of magnitude higher than what is outside. So it is not just like 2x or something like that. It is 10x, 100x, 1000x, something like that. It's a different kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's captured in the sun too, in the sun, all of these elements, like you've touched on these 8 virtues. So all these virtues, just like all the elements are compounded into one. That's what happens in the sun. The elements turn into plasma. The atoms themselves are broken down, and you get recombinations,
right,
and new creation, and also you get nuclear energy that's in there. There's all kinds of energy in the sun.
Exactly. So to expand it broadly, think of this as the dance of the universe, right? This point is the Big Bang, and this is the world expanding. And this is the case where the matter falls back into the center together and creates another Big Bang. So it is that movement at the center here. So that is in time, but this is happening in space. So it's the same. It's like where everything kind of comes together. The center has everything, and everything is going to come out of that and come back to it. So like Tao says, it is the valley. It's basically, it's returning back to the root. It is coming from the root and it is returning back to the root. So thank you, Brian. Next up is Joe.
So welcome back as well. I mean, it really, you really have been missed. And so, I really appreciated this session. And I am excited about how far the diagram has come. I mean, it really was impressive, the Osiris mapping, especially on the fly like that. But the interesting thing is that I'm looking at this diagram evolving, and you and Brian just touched on it, is how many different things that you can place into this diagram. And how many profound things that you can kind of map into the diagram. The journey of self to understanding oneself, so that you then can see the God in everyone else and see the value in everyone else. That's absolutely profound, life-changing, transformative. And we're covering them with words during the week, but we're diagramming this out so that we can actually see, and it's in a way we can clearly, it's almost measurable. And that's profound to be able to do that, to make that movement. The other aspect of it, Joe, is that it's so incredible, is that we can still integrate things like OODA loop, just as you did earlier. It shows you how the ability to bring in all these different models, the 25 different lists of things. And one of the things I thought of this weekend actually is the I Ching.
Mm-hmm.
If we could if there is a session for that, maybe at some point, because it's something I was just exposed to really for the first time, and that would be a really interesting thing to add to the list of things that we're doing.
Absolutely. So a couple of things. So firstly, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, it was
it's wonderful to be back. So I'm just delighted. So first thing I want to say is that, one of the primary values of this is what it does when you interact. Well, one of the primary values of this diagram is what it does for you when you interact, because everything is right there and it's your interaction with it, going back and forth, that you actually see more. It's like a mirror for yourself. It's like you're trying to see all of universe in one, all of kind of human nature in one thing. And you're going back and forth and you keep discovering new things. And when you're focused on one part of the diagram or one kind of movement, rest of it is still there, staring at you. So you can then focus on that one too, and then focus on the integration between your first interaction with it and the second interaction with it. And in the process, get something new. So it is designed for that. Like my ideal is like Leonardo's paintings, right? Leonardo's paintings, the way he does it is that he will do like one of my favorite paintings is this Madonna on the Rocks. And it is a painting with 4 figures, okay? And what happens is that your eye naturally moves from one figure to other. This is Jesus and his mother, and John the Baptist and his mother. And it moves, the eye moves from Mary to Jesus to John the Baptist to his mother and back to. And as your eye is moving, you're making so many connections that by the time you come back to Mary, she looks very different. Everything looks very different because everything that you have done in your mind is there, which is conditioning what you're doing. And you can do this. Like I've spent hours and hours in front of that painting in the Louvre, like until the point where some of the guards started being suspicious at me. What is his intention here? He comes day after day and stares at this for so long. But that's the kind of thing that is possible. Okay, so I think there is a lot more to be done. Okay, I think this topic is very, very deep. It is as deep as it can get. And I think I'm just skimming the surface at this point. I'm just beginning. And I'm going to put as much in it as I can. The thing is, I need to focus on things that I know. So for example, I Ching, I know I just in passing. So there is limit of what I can do on so many things. I'm going to focus on just bringing together what I know into it first, and then see where it goes from that. But I Ching is very, very interesting. It's like, especially, this like father and mother, like, you have yin and yang, and then you have all these children, like the first son who has a certain character, and then the youngest daughter who is very sweet, and there is the thunderous first son, and then the mountain second son, and you have all of this, and it's very easy to map it into things. So it would, I think, just very easily map. So there's no issue with that. But the thing is that it has to produce results. But the thing is that anytime I'm trying to integrate something into it, I'm evaluating the integration by how it transforms the diagram, in the sense that it has to maintain all its strengths that it has, and it has to add something to it. So really looking forward to it. And I really like all your feedback, because all of these things, whether the sun or I Ching or, bringing back the Gospel of John, it's like, it's all triggers more things. So thank you. Next up is Jyoti. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to shift the focus on myself. I just wanted to tell you that with all these diagrams and their modifications and their improvisations and all that, I have developed a different kind of respect for myself that I have the ability to understand and I have the ability to practice it and then notice it in, things which are different than what I have learned, and then how to respect them from a, like you said, you have to interact with the world too, and they're not going to be on the same page as yourself, but then you have to open up to listening to them too. Just don't be so individualized. So I'm at a altogether different totem pole right now after going through all your diagrams and your words of wisdom, basically. So I'm so glad that we have you here, and you don't charge us. You don't say that you have to pay this much fee or that much fee or scale or scale. So we are all grateful for that. I mean, you put in the effort for us, to make us, to enlighten us, to make us feel like, there's a meaningful word, there's a purpose, and you are definitely, a divine person who is doing the job of humanity so well with such responsibility that is amazing. So please carry on. Don't give up on us. We need that kind of enlightenment from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. So I'll say two things. One is that about understanding other people. See, what happens is that this diagram actually allows you to map people. So you can, by just mapping them and see where the interaction is, actually it makes it easier for me to interact with people. So you can say, okay, on this one, they are over here and I'm coming from here, and this is the source of conflict. So once you've mapped it, instead of just feeling, oh, there is something wrong and being angry with them, this is a way of actually saying, okay, what is actually going on? And it gives you the tool to map other people. You can map yourself and you can map the other person and say, okay, where are we? And what are the issues? So it really, the second thing is I really appreciate the compliments, but I have a long way to go, Jyoti. I mean, I don't know much, and I'm trying to learn. And the topics that we are dealing with is incredibly profound and incredibly deep. And I try to do the best I can, but I find that when I work on it, there is more to it. And as I integrate it with other systems, there are lots of great people like Louis Sullivan completely transformed the diagram. You saw that. Whereas the story of Osiris just fit into the diagram. So it's like you can evaluate even the cons. Firstly, it's like consistency. So it's like, okay, I'm able to integrate the story of Osiris. That's great. Okay. So that is saying that the diagram has evolved to a stage where it has that ability, or it is able to integrate John Boyd. But John Boyd, I know there is a lot more than that. Like, for example, he has a very deep ideas about destruction and creation. And if I went into that, and I'm planning, that's one of the people that I would look at, I'm planning to look at, that's going to raise the level of the diagram significantly more. So I'm able to map, just like you're talking about mapping other people whom are not particularly good. I find trying to map great people is even more profound experience. Let's say, okay, how can Leonardo do this in a painting? And what am I missing? Why is that my diagram so poor that it can't do what Leonardo just does, just in anything that he does? What is it about him? How does he do that? What it's like he has something which I clearly lack. So which I have some amount, but he has it in much, much greater amount. So and every time I do that, it keeps growing. So I have a long way to go, and I certainly want to make it as useful to as many people as possible. And I think I really appreciate all of you, Jyoti, each of you kind of interacting with the diagram in as much and giving me feedback, because I'm using it in order to grow faster, because each person is coming from a very different context, and they are bringing the observations that they are making, which I've many times have not noticed, and I'm trying to integrate it. So thank you very much. All right, folks. So let me give you a preview of Wednesday. On Wednesday, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about virtues, because if you look at the diagram, let me bring up the diagram one last time here. Let's see where it is gone. Too many windows. There. All right. This part inside is the virtues. Okay, that's what virtues are about. And it's a very foreign concept in modern times. So how do we talk about it? So I'm going to I recommend looking, if you have not attended the meetup on virtues that we did from the great books, I recommend watching that. That is there on our YouTube channel. That is there in the meetup page. If you go to the meetup page for the Wednesday meetup, there is a link to that. That is summary of what the scribals. I focused mostly on scribals because what I realized, it was stunning for me to realize that, is that I had just read the Syntopicon on virtues before, but I had not noticed the breakdown of who had what to say. Moderns have almost nothing to say on virtue. That's not true. It's like they talk a lot, but about something like 60–70% of it is junk and 30% of it is poison. Okay, so it's like it's really bad. Compare that to all the scribals, the time period that we are looking at. They have incredible things to say. And what that presentation does, it gives you a summary of what all the questions that are raised and all the key answers given during that. So I want to connect that with this diagram. I also want to look at things that each of them, like what is it? So for example, if you look at Bhagavad Gita and all the yogas, those all correspond to the introverted functions of Jung, the FI, the TI, the NI, and the SI, but not to the extroverted functions, which is what West is very good at. So for example, founding fathers on TE of how do you create a moral system that works for people as such, regardless of where they are as individuals, not as a part of a caste system, but as individuals. Oh, they are at a much higher level in terms of expression of beauty or expression like of creation. What like people like Leonardo have done, or what Beethoven have done is something. So basically, there is something which not each of the system covers all of it. So it would be good to see the strengths and weaknesses and how we can bring all of them together to kind of raise it to a new level. So bring your understanding of virtue. Let's discuss the virtues in Tao Te Ching, in Bible, in Bhagavad Gita. Let's look at the virtues in the great books, all put together. And let's look at the virtues as we have put in this diagram. I have new terms for all the virtues that I want to share, and I want to compare them with the old terms and go through all of them and see which ones you like better and why. So I look forward to doing that. So we're going to be actually doing the mapping of space here, but not outside here, but we're going to map the space here of virtues. So that's what we're going to do on Wednesdays. All right, folks. So thank you so much, and we will see you soon. Just delighted to be back, and just, you guys are amazing friends. So I'm really lucky to have all of you here. Thank you.
We're lucky to have you too.
Bye.
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 Take care, Srikant.
Bye.